So this car here has absolutely no brakes. It has never had brakes since I owned it. That's only been about 2 weeks. So we need this car to have brakes. Otherwise we can't get it to DMV to verify it matches the pink slip that we got with the car, because it hasn't been registered since 2006, which is 18 years. So we're gonna try and get the brakes running on here, and let's open up the hood and see what we got to work with. We got to start at the reservoir because that's kind of where the brakes start, and we'll go through the system and I'll take you through that process so you can kind of see where the issue is. Maybe it's just out of fluid and that's enough. We'll see. So let's take a look. So the brake reservoir, let's start under here. The brake reservoir is right here, and in a previous video I showed that it's just a little bit dry. There is no fluid in there, so let's go get some fluid and top that up, and then we'll chase the fluid from there and see if it gets down to the master cylinder first, and then out to each wheel cylinder, starting in the back rear passenger wheel cylinder. The fluid flows from the reservoir down to the master cylinder, which is kind of behind the front tires here. So I figured it's easier to just go ahead and pop off both front tires and jack up the front. Makes it a lot easier to access the master cylinder to try and troubleshoot what might be the problem, if the problem is the master cylinder anyway. So these tires have 5 lugs, and so just popping off the hubcap very gently with a screwdriver on both sides so as not to damage the wheel or the hubcap. And then so next I'm just going to go ahead and use a wrench, get these wheels off. First got to put on the parking brake. Don't need to fight the car rolling around while trying to get the wheels off. Who knows the last time these lug nuts have been taken off. So I could have put on some lubricant, but let's just go bold and see if we can get it off without needing something like that. So the thoughts going through my head right now are, is it worth the time to go plug in the air compressor and get the impact gun to get these off? Or should I just, keep slowly going along here? I think it's going to work out to just go ahead and use the wrench. Hopefully the other side is going to come off as easy. So let's go give it a try. Now, of course, I don't want to take the lug nuts completely off right now because, the car will fall down. And on the other hand, I didn't want to wait until you jack up your car because then you're really fighting the wheels spinning. So you usually want to loosen the lug nuts at least while the car is on the ground so you can get them loose. And then once you jack up the car, it's going to be really easy to take the lug nuts off so you can remove the wheels. So on a Bug, the best place to jack up the front, if you're going to do it from the center versus using the jack points on the side, is just put it here under the front beam. In case you're wondering why I'm not pumping it all the way up and down, there is the hood of another bug right behind my jack location, so I kind of can't go too far, otherwise I'll bang the hood, which you might hear me do a little later accidentally. So I'm going to walk us in to see the master cylinder. So coming around the front of the car to the left side where the wheel came off, poking our head deep inside here. This is the master cylinder. I'll brighten it up a little bit, but it's going to be easier if we look at this. So here I've mocked up just a simple version of the master cylinder and the reservoir. So if this is our reservoir up here that we poured a little bit of fluid into, gravity feeds it down through this tube and into the master cylinder here. So we'll add more pieces later so you can understand how it branches out from here and what this is and such. But for the moment, just realize the reservoir comes down and fills the master cylinder right here. Now the master cylinder works by pressing on your brake pedal. So over here, simplified brake pedal, right? So you're going to step on your brake pedal. It's going to do a little something like that. Then that is going to push this little rod that you have. And this white thing here, this represents your firewall. So that's separating. You don't see that in the video because that's on the other side of the firewall. So this is what you see in the video. Everything else is on the other side here. But what happens, you step on the brake. And again, this is really simplified, but the idea is this rod goes in and then that pushes a little plunger inside, just like when you're, pressing on like a hypodermic needle or something and you squeeze it and fluid gets compressed. So in here, the fluid gets compressed. So as you're pressing in on the brake, the fluid wants to get pushed down these 3 additional lines. And we're not covering it in this video, but this here is the brake light switch. They go to the back of the car, so this one goes to the back, this one goes to the front left wheel cylinder, which we'll get to, and this goes to the front right wheel cylinder. So the first thing I actually want to do is see if when we step on the brakes, do we have any leakage here, and is the fluid even coming out the wheel cylinder? So this top line coming out is kind of that rusty metal you see in the video. So this one here, and then that attaches to a rubber hose because you have to have some flexibility for when the wheel is turning. And for that, let's turn on a little bit more visibility here. So you got this connector, this just vague representation of a connector to a rubber hose. And then from there, you come out to the wheel cylinder itself. So the wheel cylinder, the part that we're gonna deal with, is too close. So backing up a little bit. So what we're going to see is just this part here. We're going to see where the rubber comes in and attaches to the wheel cylinder, and then you're going to see this little spigot here inside the brakes that you can't see unless you take off the drums. Is this little assembly on the inside, little plungers that push out on each side against the shoe, but we'll get to that later when we take off the wheels and look in that. But really all we're dealing with right now is this little guy here, which let's switch back to the video, and do an actual test where we're going to loosen that, that allows the fluid to come through this hose and come right back out that little spigot. And that's how you bleed the brakes, by bleeding out the air through here. So the first thing I want to do is just determine, can fluid even get to this closest brake cylinder? Because if this wheel cylinder doesn't even get any fluid coming out, then we have a problem with the master cylinder even functioning. So let's see how we do that. Step 1, remove pine cone from Hume Lake so you can check to see if there's any leakage. And looking around, I don't see any leakage. Next, we're going to follow the line that goes out to the front left wheel cylinder. You can see it going to the rubber line there, transitioning, going all the way out to the wheel. And here is where we're going to find that little spigot and where the hose connects into the wheel cylinder. Going to put a little spray lube on here just to make sure it loosens up. We need an 8mm wrench for this, and a closed one works the best for the best grip. However, I've got some clearance issue and I can't get it all the way around where it needs to fit, so I got to get a little tricky. So I'm just using a Dremel tool here to grind off a little bit of the wrench so that I can sneak it in where it needs to go. So now we can go ahead and do a test fit and see how the new fixed wrench works. And success, it's able to loosen the little spigot there, or the little release valve, and we've got some brake fluid. So that's good. This means there is a flow of fluid from the master cylinder out to the first closest wheel cylinder here. So now we can go ahead and use the one-person, what they call it, the Bleed-O-Matic brake bleeding kit here. So the idea is you hook up this little mini reservoir with the hose, and as you step on the brakes by yourself, this will fill up with fluid. And because there's a little hose, you can't see it, but there's a little hose going down into that little container as well, and that keeps air from going back into the system when you let off the brakes. So the concept's great. You'll see in a minute why I actually have to go get somebody to help me. So as I start getting into the car and stepping on the brakes, the goal is that when you're stepping on the brakes repeatedly, all of the air, see all those air bubbles there? That's bad, because that means your compression is going to be terrible, and that's why you need to bleed it to get the air out. So you'll see it's starting to thicken up, which is great. The reservoir is filling up. So stepping on the brakes works, but now you'll see a couple problems. One is my little reservoir release is a little too loose, which is why you see it leaking there. And it's not making a good seal, and it's probably putting more air in the system than getting rid of the air at this point. So trying to set it up. Now, you'll see there's a big round disc on the little reservoir. That would be to stick to something metal, but I didn't have anything metal nearby. So my idea was I'll just balance it on this hose and do it very gently, and this time it'll work. However, getting in the car, you'll see that it does not work. So this is really, in this case, this kind of is a two-person job. I need to go get backup, so that's what I'm going to go do and come back. And then I'm actually, now that it's working, I'm going to go ahead and start on the rear passenger, the rear right cylinder, which is where you want to start when you're bleeding the entire brake system. And then I'm going to work my way all the way back to the front. So we're going to go right rear, right front, left front. So I'm getting on my phone here so that I can crawl under there and show you exactly where I'm going to be jacking up the rear end when you're doing it from the center. A place to do it. Now in hindsight, I probably should have used a block of wood across the entire mount and not from the dead center. That's kind of a party foul, but I won't do it again. But you can see it's kind of in front of the engine, meaning front of the car. So let's get the back jacked up and crank that up, and then Once it's up high enough, we have to go get a couple more jack stands. So the car is going to be fully floating now. So for the jack stands in the rear, you want to put them under these little tubes. I'll show a close-up of that in a little bit. And you just put that on each side, and that'll support the rear end. So crawling back under the car, here's where you want to put your jack stands for the rear of it. Just under these big giant tubes. Now, of course, it's a good idea to go ahead and bang the car around just to make sure it's not going to fall off. So here we are at the right rear wheel cylinder, and just putting on a little lubricant there to try and loosen it up. Who knows the last time this thing has been loose. So I'm just going to let it soak for a little bit, and then get on my fancy custom wrench that I modified and give that a little bump to try and loosen that up. I have a helper this time. Okay, go ahead and press down. Okay, and then let it up. Press down. Let it up. So the idea here is just to keep pumping it until lots of fluid has gone through to get rid of all the bubbles. Okay, let me know when it's up. Okay. And the next time, take 10, the count of 10 to push it down and count out while you're doing it. This is just to make sure it's tightened while the brake is being pressed and not let up. Okay. Okay, now try to just press them in general. Does it go all the way to the floor? Normal speed?
Not really, no.
Oh.
Yeah.
Okay.
Again, yeah, it's not there. It's only like halfway there.
So now we're moving over to the left rear wheel cylinder and repeating the process again. Should be firm now. Or firmer.
Yeah, for sure.
And now we're up to the right front wheel. Okay, getting ready? Okay.
Same thing?
Yep. The distance is getting shorter, so getting rid of the air is a lot easier. You also want to make sure you keep refilling the reservoir while you're doing this, otherwise you might get air in it again. Okay, and then do a 10 count. Did it get? Okay, good. That means it's firm and working. Then one more. And now back to where we started with the front left wheel cylinder. Okay, let it go.
Oh, this one's actually.
Oh, maybe I didn't open it yet. There, is that easier now?
Oh yeah, there we go. Much easier. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, I guess.
Did it stop?
Yeah.
Excellent. All right, and now the big test, spinning the rear wheel and seeing if it stops. It is spinning, and try again.
And stop. Success. That's a little different than when it's out driving on the road full speed, but you know, this is better than what we had before, going to the floor.
Before, after.
Oh yeah, that's what we're talking about right there. Brake and brake. Can't put it in order.
All right, so it's been a few days since we've gotten these brakes up and running. Kind of been waiting to make sure there's no leaks or anything. So I've gone around to the different wheels. Everything looks good, but since I only got 1 day for the permit, I get 1 day to drive it in for DMV. I'm gonna sneak it out for a little drive around the block just to make sure it works, because I got to go. I think it's like 5 miles to the DMV. So I'm gonna take it for a drive just to make sure that the brakes work in a very close environment in case I got to push it home. So let's get the wheels back on and take it for a spin, make sure that the brakes are up and running, and then we'll be good to make that DMV appointment. All right, here we go. Let's go for a brake test. Brake. Wow, that pulls to the right, but it does technically slow the car down. So now we're in second gear. Let's drop back to first gear, see how we do. Alright, it's all over the place. Let's try one more time with the brakes, holding the pedal or holding the steering wheel. Alright, it's not bad. It'll get us to DMV. So with that, we're going to call this episode Praying to Make Sure I Get Back Home, and go. Alright, I couldn't end it there. Such a cliffhanger. Would he make it back? Yes, he did. I did make it back, and so did the car. Your prayers have been answered. Thank you kindly. So, you know, it runs and it stops and it's a little rough. So I am pondering the idea of getting one of those VW tow bars and towing it over to DMV. But that was a short ponderance because I thought, you know, a lot of this is all about story, and what tells a story better than giving it a go and gambling to see if we can get to DMV. So Monday is a holiday here for us before Christmas. So that's going to be the day that I cash in that 1 free day of driving the car, get it to DMV, and have them certify that that is the car I bought. I'm confident that that's going to be the case. And yeah, so that's going to wrap it up. The brakes are working.